problem. You have defined all your metrics. You start collecting, gathering the information. You put everything in nice graphs, dashboards. And then you come in that meeting and three kind of situations can happen. Sometimes only one, sometimes combination of all three. First situation, people around the table are listening. No questions, no feedback. So you don't have a clue. Okay, do they agree? Are they happy? Are they not happy? Second thing, every single metric is questioned. Why do you have so many defects? No, we don't agree. You report 10 defects with severity high. No, it's severity low. So questioning every single metric. And the last situation is where people around the table, they listen to you, they hear you, but they say, okay, we just continue. Whatever you are saying, we overrule you, we go into production. This is sounding familiar? Okay. And then what I did, I was sad, angry, frustrated, because I put a lot of effort and I thought I had something in mind, but it went totally wrong. And what I was doing, I was blaming the stakeholders, the project manager. No, they don't understand. They don't have any clue about testing. They don't have respect for us as tester. But since that pattern was recurring, project over project, customer over customer, then I thought, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe me as a tester, test manager, I have to think about what I was trying to say and to tell, and what was the result and outcome. And that's where subjective reporting came into the game. And I thought maybe that can help me to tell better the story to the business. And the word is out, subjective. What is subjectivity? Let's do a small test. Who liked this painting? It's a painting. Only some hands. Okay, may I ask you, why do you like this painting?
I like it because the lamppost reminds me of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah, okay. Somebody else? Yeah. Okay. May I ask you, based on the painting, is it day or is it night? Both. Okay. Which season is it? Is it summer? Is it autumn? Summer? Okay. So, just by the way, it's a painting by a Belgian painter, René Magritte. So, if you like this kind of paintings, you have to Google him. He has a lot of this kind of paintings. But just a simple test, different interpretations. And that's exactly subjectivity. Feeling, having our own interpretations, own influences, thinking in a different mind. When I started in testing, I was trained in TMAP. I don't know if you heard about the TMAP methodology. It was a thick blue Bible, 300 pages, which gives you all kind of information how to do structured testing. Very good book. And I remember one of the trainings I had, and it was about the skills you need as a tester. And they said, okay, you have to be critical thinking outside of the box, and be objective and neutral. You as a tester, you have to collect the information, you have to bring the facts, but it's not your role to take a decision. It's your stakeholders, it's the management that have to do. And, well, that makes life easy for a tester because, okay, we have our metrics, we just say, that's the state. It's up to you to report. But, and going further in that philosophy, we have, with our metrics, we had a lot of means which helps us to give, in fact, an answer on two main questions. Test efficiency is answering the question, are we doing the right things? And effectiveness, are we doing the things right? And of course, the optimum is this line, where we end up in the ideal world as a test team being very productive, spending the money, resources, effort in the best way we can. And then typically that are just for each quadrant, you have plenty of those kind of metrics, of which defect leakage is often used a lot to detect, okay, how many bugs did you miss from system testing to integration testing or to acceptance testing. And of course, this one is about which defects were we able to find during static testing, reviewing the designs, the analysis, of course, to detect them as early as possible. So coming back to my initial situation, so what is the problem? As a tester, I have all the means, I have all the metrics, so what is now the problem? And thinking about it, I was asking me 4 questions. Because based on the pattern, somehow the thing I had in my mind, it wasn't going as I planned and as I thought. First question, who believes that something exists as the objective truth? You believe that?
Some things.
Some things, okay. Well, personally, I think that something as the objective truth doesn't exist, just we are biased. We are biased all over the time. Not only in testing, but just in daily life. So even if you may think I'm not biased, you are. Maybe implicitly, maybe indirectly. And if you search on biases in testing, you find plenty of them. And I just list some examples. First one is the negativity bias. And that's for me one of the other main reasons why we kill ourselves reporting about status to the metrics. Because we focus on what's going wrong. We start with reporting. Yes, we have still so many defects open. We still have so many test cases to execute. My test environment is not ready. I have another talk and I call this, we are bleating sheeps. And we testers, we have to transform to no sheep testers. Because just think at the sound of a sheep, we are bleating all over the time. And according to the book, yes, we have many reasons to bleat. But starting with this point, first time it will work, twice it will work, but the third time the business, they know you and they say, okay, we don't listen anymore to you. Next thing is the bandwagon effect, where some reflection, some interpretation of someone is spreading around. I had that in one of project I worked on a piece of software to test, and it was with a developer. I will call him Bob. And Bob was not very good in delivering bugless software. So I find a lot of bugs when I was working together with Bob. And another colleague was arriving at the customer, and he started another project working with Bob. And guess what happens? I said to the guy, you work with Bob? Ooh, Bob. You will find a lot of defects with Bob. And my colleague, the first time he found a defect, he came to me, yeah, you tell me about Bob, but indeed, Bob, that's totally crap what he delivers. And it goes on, it goes on. So that's the bandwagon effect, that we start spreading reflections among the people. And the last example is blindness. Just miss very obvious things. And that can happen in different ways. New release, only focusing on new functionalities. No spending too much time to regression testing. Tunnel vision, if you worked for many years on the same software, you tend to think, okay, that part, no risk. Of course, we need to do risk-based testing, but sometimes we are too narrowed. Just 3 examples to tell you the so-called objectivity as a tester, we can put it partially aside. Then I was thinking, why do we reach the audience? Are they really ignoring us, or are they just having no clue what we try to tell with all our metrics? And I think there we kill ourselves a little bit, because first of all, we have too much metrics. I will not mention the vendor, but this, you can find this on one of a famous vendor, and he speaks about 64 essential testing metrics. Oh my God. If I'm a tester and I have to start with collecting metrics and I see 64, I have no clue. Do I have to try to collect them all? And if I have to make a selection, which ones do I need to take of the 64? So it's too much. No insight, metrics without goals. And I made this kind of mistakes in reporting. I thought, here you have the status about Mario Bros. Release we have tested, and that's the evolution of where we are with executing the new feature test cases. If I would ask you, which kind of conclusion can you draw based on this graph? Are we doing a great job as a testing team? Some comments? Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, and yeah, no reference. So, it's lacking information. At least it would help us if, for example, if we would have known what was the goal we put ourselves, and then we would see, okay, we have an issue because we see that only for 3 months we were hitting the target or just above, but we have some issues here. And then if your stakeholders know this information, they will ask you as a test coordinator, okay, what will you do? How will you adjust this to be on the right track? And therefore, we need additional information, because this picture, by adding not only what we have done with the new feature test, but if we add additional information about regression testing, then in fact we can see that in terms of executed number of test cases, we are not doing that wrong. So we are increasing. But we see that we do a lot of regression testing every month. That can indicate that we have a lot of regression problems. It can indicate that we are aware of putting enough attention to regression testing. And one of the decisions could be, okay, let's try to automate those regression testing, that we could put the effort to manual execution of the new feature test. But just a few examples that by starting from this graph, which I was used to put in this kind of dashboards, then it's not that difficult to understand that my audience is looking to it, that say, okay, it doesn't say anything to me. Third question, and that's why should subjective reporting can help us now to overcome this kind of issues? And this is all related with focus on what matters, value. That's another word is out. I don't know if you know the World Quality Report. The World Quality Report, it's yearly published by Capgemini and Micro Focus. around September, October, and it gives you a very good insight in the trends in testing QA worldwide. And only in the most recent report, there, one of the recommendations is focus on what matters. Focus on customer experience, and there need to be a shift from focusing on IT quality to production quality. And that's, for me, one of the areas that we are really missing. Value assurance. Because testing for many decades can be categorized or you do something with testing to support the quality control area, so the execution of test cases, for example. And the quality assurance area is, for example, part of static testing reviewing. But we miss an important part, value assurance. And value assurance, that's about product value. That's about, if I buy a product, if I buy a software, does it have the features that I have in mind, and is it worth the price I'm paying for it?
Okay. Hello. User experience. That's another thing, and that's about not only about usability, but for example, a website. Do I need to scroll down for 10 seconds to find my information? Is it about an app used by a field technical engineer with working gloves? Are the buttons big enough to manipulate? And customer experience, that's testing. And nowadays, every company website has a chatbot. When I use that chatbot, do I get this kind of silly questions, answers? When I get in contact with the service, with a call agent, is he responding to me in a way I expected? And to illustrate this, the last part, my mother, she had a mobile subscription for years, and she is very loyal to that mobile company. She is happy about the products. Even I told her, Mom, you don't have the right option for it. No, leave it. And 2 weeks ago, she had a problem with her mobile. She went to a shop, and that guy was explaining, okay, you have to go to settings, you have to change tap, bam. And my mother, the only thing she could say to the guy was, I'm nearly 80 years old. I don't have a clue what you are saying to me. I don't have a clue what you are doing. And she came at home and she called me, I want to change my mobile subscription. I'm angry. The guy, he was talking Chinese to me. And so we forget this. Even if you have a good product quality, you can kill your product, you can kill the customer experience just by doing this. And we need to test this as well. And that's something we can learn from other disciplines like IT service management. So the latest ITIL framework is totally focusing on value-driven. And there they introduced the notion of XLA, experience level agreements. So on top of the traditional SLAs, which are hard data based on the metrics like we are collecting and testing, they start talking about experience and how to measure it. And in testing, if we pretend with user acceptance testing, we covered that. My opinion is that with typically traditional user acceptance testing, we cover only one part, and we end up in the so-called watermelon effect. Green outside, but a lot of things are not going well inside because we are not focusing enough on the other aspects. And then, of course, but how do you do that? How do you report? What is subjective reporting looking like? So I have 4 examples, a way you can do it. First of all is what we call the customer satisfaction metrics. And that are metrics that are typically used by marketing. So like the first one is a common one, Net Promoter Score, where you just by asking one question, do you tend to recommend our product to your colleagues? That is asking to your customer loyalty. So all this kind of metrics, they exist. You can look up how they are calculated. So you can just reuse it and add it to your traditional testing metrics. Another one is what I call the business mood board. What do you see? Here you see that was of an application, and it was a mobile application, and it consists of different menu items. So for every menu item, we put one block. And for every module or item, we decided upfront what are the topics from a testing point of view to pay attention to it. And we agreed only to use colors, so no metrics, to indicate what is the state about it. And then we applied another thing, what we called the business happiness index. And it was based on one of those previous customer satisfaction metrics, where we asked regularly a score, and then we put it in a graph like this. And those lines, they indicated a release or a major update, and it gives a good view, okay, what was the customer happiness over the project, over the different releases we have. And of course, and that's something not to forget, I don't say you have to put your traditional metrics away, no. But we didn't start with the metrics, we just started with this. And for some stakeholders, that was just enough. They were happy with it. They saw directly, okay, we need to continue for this module, we need to continue with testing. And okay, some other, like a project manager, he was then asking, okay, for example, here in the everywhere module, I see that we have quite some issues with defects. What is it about? What kind of defects? And then we provide more the hard numbers behind. Another way you can do it is what I call the quadrant question. And the quadrant question, you take just two axes and you put criteria which you can relate to each other. And then we express the question that we address to our stakeholders quite explicit. Maybe the first time we did that, one of the stakeholders was a little bit upset because it's a kind of a rude way to express that how we will spend your money. He was interpreting this, how you will spill my money. No, so we say no, it's explicit, so it's right in the things that you are interested in. And then for each quadrant, we put a kind of a statement, but also very explicit. And then based on the applications we were testing, we put it in one of the quadrants, so that it was based on an internal activity, an assessment by the test team. And with this graph, we go to the stakeholders to say, okay, that's our proposal. That's the way we think about the strategy for those applications. Do you agree, yes or no? And then that's an additional granularity that you can add, but we didn't do that. If you put it more to the right or to the left, it can even give more granularity, but to keep it simple, we just put it a dot in one of the quadrants. And by doing this, this facilitates the discussion more easy. With some of the applications, they were not happy. They said, okay, well, no, you need to put a lot of effort, but then, of course, we had to divide the money and the budget amongst all the projects. Then it allows us to take the decisions together with our stakeholders. And another one is what I call the persona lights. So no traffic lights, but based on personas. So personas is typical way of defining which type of customers do I have. And you can reuse them. And the rule was we just indicate one of the traffic colors, what is the status of today for that persona. And that's something we didn't do yet, but it's in the next release of this, that we will add to the persona more test-related information, because typically when you define a persona, you mention nothing about the kind of test you want to do. But here, for example, we said, okay, maybe Justin, that's someone who really cares about performance and who pay attention to performance testing. So that's another way of expressing subjective reporting. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. So my story is not put aside your traditional way of collecting metric, but be aware that subjectivity becomes or is the new normal. And if you want to report appropriate to your stakeholders, to your business, you have to start integrating, embracing this part as well to address the value assurance part. Thank you. Questions?
So my question is, you said that you use for quality, use at most 3 metrics, right?
No, not
Per module, per module.
no, they are not. Wait, I will go back. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, it are not metrics. It are topics that we define that's important for that module. So, for example, you see here they were the defects was important. The application was also tested by the crowd. So for that item, they were interested in having a view about the crowd bug. So it's not really a metrics, it's a test topic we should focus for that specific module.
So it's topics, and what is interesting, how do you choose, because you have probably dozen of those topics.
Yeah.
So my question is, how do you choose those topics that are most important for appropriate module?
Yeah. That's something that we agreed and discussed with the stakeholders and the business together. So it was not something that we from test team imposed and we say, for this it like this. No. And for some topics, the business said in the first round, yeah, we don't have a clue. Can you propose something? But then by doing some small iterations, we came and we agreed. And the fact that the business was in that exercise, we avoided later on discussions that they said, yeah, but for personalized, no, that is not important, because they agreed that, okay, we need to look more specific to defect as well for that module.
How did you find people in these other functions that were willing to come up with something new with you like this?
Sorry, Ken?
How did you find the people in those other functions who are willing to work on something new with you like this?
That's a good question. And to be honest, all the things we tried is on kind of experimental phase. So I started on a project to explain to the stakeholders, let's try to do it in another way. And I was luckily on one of the projects that one of the business stakeholders, because he was always complaining and he was saying, your typical dashboards, it's shitty. It's too much. And then I asked, okay, what do you propose? And then I had an idea and I thought, okay, let's try. And in the beginning he was quite skeptical, but he said, okay, let's try it. And then he was involved and he saw the added value. And then for one release, we said, let's try to do it like this, collect the feedback and adapt it. So it's something that is not commonly implemented yet. So that's for sure. But I believe in the next years, reporting about subjectivity value, it definitely will come to testing.
Hi, I had a question, and it's around honesty or unreliable reporting. And probably this has happened to many of us. So very often when you're on a project and it's not going very well, and you're giving some kind of reporting there, often there is pressure to like sexy up the results. So actually things are looking better than they are. And that's with what's relatively objective reporting of hard numbers. So if you're doing subjective reporting, does it become easier or more tempting, or does it become harder, or is it irrelevant to that kind of manipulation?
Yeah, that's a very valid question, and on which today I don't have the right answer, because sometimes when we do this kind of reporting using one of the examples, then you feel that even the stakeholders agreed upon to do it like this, that you feel the push to still ignore it. But what helps us a lot is by involving them from the beginning, that it's already hard to try to manipulate them from their side. Because traditionally what we did in the project, we came up from testing. We imposed the metrics we thought that the stakeholders, the business, were interested in. And then it was more easy for them to say, sorry, you didn't discuss this with us. We are not interested in this kind of metrics. We don't want that you gather this data. But by involving them, it's more difficult to completely ignore this. But yeah, it's a bit like you have in Agile. If you're voting about confidence in a PI planning with the fist of eye, yeah, it's express a subject feeling, and you can discuss this always.
Wim, you have a question from the online crowd.
Okay, a very articulated presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have another one?
How do I know if I'm not, or if my subjectivity is being understood by the others? Or am I not subjective, only, so to say that I'm presenting not just my point of view, that I'm presenting a point of view that everybody can understand?
Yeah. Well, for example, that's, late. Yeah. With this one, that exercise was done in the team. And the first round, you see that, okay, someone was putting the phase out of Internet Explorer, was put more to the right, and another colleague was put it really like this. And then it's a little bit applying the same methodology as planning poker, that finally we have to come to a kind of agreement. And then by listening to the interpretation of your colleagues, it can help you to assess, okay, maybe, yeah, what my colleague is telling me, it's correct. Maybe I have to adjust it. So it represents a kind of a common view on what is subjectivity.
My question is, I assume that before you reach this type of reporting, you use sort of classical reporting, KPIs and stuff like that. And then you shifted to this with the input of stakeholders and so on. What is the added value or the increased benefits, or what was the improvement to the product, right, the actual value by shifting to this type of reporting? And how did you measure that in comparison with the old reported? And obviously, how did you report that?
Yeah, but typically we are using the kind of standard metrics like you have by using tools like test management tools or other reporting tools. But I can't say that this kind of reporting always led to an improvement of the quality. At least it helps us to define when is testing enough. Because from our perspective QA testing team, we want to continue with testing. If we have 10 defects open, we say, no, it's not enough. We need to continue. You cannot go into production. And this way is very helpful. Because for the business, they are more thinking, in that project, they were really thinking from this kind of looking to the application, to the product. And they said, okay, even if this one is orange, I don't mind. Because we know that this type of customer will typically not use my product before, only use it around Christmas period. So we still have time to improve it. So they take a risk to go into production. So it's a way to decide together, can we put the next step to go to another testing phase or to release into production?
We might have the second online question.
Do you recommend a certain source from where we can learn more about subjective reporting, a book maybe? Well, to be honest, it's hard to find anything about subjective reporting, about testing. I can definitely, to that person, if you, my LinkedIn, my email address, if you send me, I can send you the links, the articles I use to read about it. And definitely today I found testing, quality need to be data-driven. So I didn't find a book, but I took a lot of inspiration by the IT service management and the ETIL framework. And there you can find a lot of useful information, principles, and I can recommend to read about, and I can send the link to the article about the concept of experience level agreements. There is a complete framework behind, and that framework can be used to add some more testing related info as well to answer that question. So yeah, a lot of information is I find today in this area.
We would have time for one more question if there is one. Or we can close. Thank you very much, Wim.
Okay, thank you.